You walk into the fitting bay with your old irons, 7, 8 years on them, maybe more. You've been hitting them your whole game, and lately something feels off, not broken, just behind. The fitter hands you a new 7-iron. You take a few swings. The launch monitor lights up. Ball speed is up. Carry distance jumps 12, maybe 15 yards over what your old club was doing. The fitter nods like he already knew. And for a second, you feel it, that mix of relief and validation that maybe this is finally the answer. Here's what nobody in that bay mentioned. That new 7-iron you just hit, its loft is closer to what your old 6-iron was. In some cases, closer to a strong 5-iron from a set built 15 years ago. The number on the sole didn't change. The function underneath it did. The ball went farther. That part is real. But the comparison, that's where things get blurry. This is not a story about technology failing. Modern irons are genuinely impressive pieces of engineering, faster faces, lower centers of gravity, more forgiveness on off-center hits than anything that existed 2 decades ago. The engineering is real. The problem isn't what the clubs can do. The problem is what the industry told you those extra yards actually meant. Distance was repackaged as progress. And for a long time, almost nobody asked the question that should have been obvious from the start. More distance compared to what, exactly? If you've been playing golf for more than a few years, you probably already felt something was off. Maybe your pitching wedge stopped behaving like a wedge. Maybe your gaps started feeling inconsistent. Maybe you bought a new set, gained yards on paper, and somehow felt less confident picking a club on the course. That discomfort wasn't in your head. It was in your lofts. If this channel is new to you, we don't sell equipment hype here. We break it down. Hit subscribe and stay with me, because what comes next is going to change how you look at every iron in your bag. To understand why traditional lofts are coming back, you have to understand how they left in the first place. It didn't happen overnight. It happened gradually, one product cycle at a time, in a way that was easy to miss if you weren't paying close attention. Go back a few decades and iron sets had a relatively stable internal logic. A 7-iron sat somewhere in a loft range that made it feel like a middle iron, controllable, versatile, reliable from 150 to 165 yards depending on the player. A pitching wedge was genuinely a wedge. It had enough loft to generate real stopping power, to hold a firm green, to give you options around the flag. The numbers on the soles meant something specific and predictable. Then the distance wars started. Manufacturers figured out that golfers respond to yards, not to spin rates, not to descent angles, not to consistency windows. Yards. The number that shows up on a rangefinder. The number you tell your buddies after a round. So the engineering teams got to work. And to be fair, a lot of what they built was genuinely impressive. Thinner faces that flex more at impact. Tungsten weights pushed low and back to help launch. Multi-material constructions that delivered speed and forgiveness together. Real innovations, real results. But somewhere in that process, the lofts started getting stronger too. Quietly. A degree here, a degree and a half there. A modern game improvement 7-iron that might have sat at 34 or 35 degrees a generation ago now often comes in at 30 or 31, sometimes less. That's not a small difference. That's the equivalent of renaming a club without changing the number on it. And the marketing never mentioned it. The ads showed carry distances. The fitting bays showed ball speed. Nobody held up a loft gauge and said, by the way, this comparison isn't quite what it looks like. The result was a generation of golfers who thought they were getting more distance from better technology, when a meaningful portion of those yards came from a simple physics reality. Less loft sends the ball farther. Not smarter, just farther. That distinction between distance from engineering and distance from loft manipulation is the thing the industry never wanted you to separate. Because once you separate them, the whole comparison falls apart. Here's where it stops being a theory and starts being a scorecard problem. Think about a golfer, call him Dave. 15 handicap, plays twice a month, genuinely loves the game. Dave goes into a fitting at Golf Galaxy, hits a new set of game improvement irons, and walks out carrying 15 extra yards on his 7-iron. He's excited. He tells his playing partners. He feels like he finally closed the gap on guys who outdrove him for years. 3 months later, something is quietly wrong. Dave can't figure out his 145-yard club anymore. His new pitching wedge flies 140, sometimes 145 on a good strike, but it lands hot, doesn't check up, releases to the back of greens he used to hold. His gap wedge, bought separately because the fitter recommended it, covers distances that used to belong to his old pitching wedge. And his 5-iron is barely in the bag. The Loft is so strong that launching it cleanly requires a ball-striking consistency he doesn't bring every round. Dave didn't get worse. His bag got more complicated. The distance was real, but the system that bag was supposed to create, a clean, predictable ladder of carries from wedge to long iron, quietly fell apart. And Dave keeps blaming his swing, keeps wondering why his iron game feels shakier than it did with the old set everyone told him was outdated. This is what almost never gets discussed in a fitting room. A launch monitor tells you how far a club goes. It cannot tell you whether that distance fits coherently inside the rest of your bag. It cannot tell you whether your pitching wedge still behaves like a scoring club. Those are system questions. And strong Lofts, sold one club at a time as a distance upgrade, broke the system for a lot of players without anyone naming it out loud. There's a reason the gap wedge became standard in every set recommendation over the last 2 decades. It wasn't because golfers suddenly developed a new distance need. It was because the pitching wedge drifted so far toward 9-iron territory that a new club had to fill the hole it left. You've been carrying the evidence of this problem in your bag the whole time. If you've ever felt like your iron distances don't quite add up, that's not a swing problem. That's a system problem. The Smart Bag Blueprint at thisSmartBagBlueprint.com was built to solve exactly this. 14 clubs, 7 categories, one framework showing how every club in your bag should connect. Link is in the description and pinned in the comments. QR code is on screen now. Go there now and build the bag that actually makes sense for your game. Now here's the part that should make you genuinely uncomfortable. The industry didn't just strengthen Lofts and walk away. It strengthened Lofts, watched the gaps appear, and then sold you the solution to the problem it created. The gap wedge didn't emerge from some organic evolution of the short game. It emerged because the pitching wedge was no longer doing its original job. The approach wedge, the utility iron, the hybrid replacing a long iron that became unlaunchable. These weren't innovations answering new needs. In many cases, they were patches covering a system quietly broken by loft inflation. That's not a conspiracy. It's just how product ecosystems work when the incentive is to sell more units. Create the problem, package the solution separately, sell both. And most golfers never saw it, because each piece looked reasonable on its own. Of course, you need a gap wedge. Of course, a hybrid is easier than a 4-iron. Each individual recommendation made sense. The pattern only becomes visible when you step back and ask, why does a modern iron set require so much external scaffolding to function? Now, the honest counter-argument, because this channel doesn't do one-sided takes. Strong lofts are not wrong for every player. A golfer with higher swing speed who already launches the ball too high might genuinely benefit from a stronger loft that flattens trajectory and adds distance without ballooning. A player with exceptionally consistent contact can extract more from a strong lofted iron because they hit the center often enough to get the spin and height the design needs. And in the hands of a skilled fitter who measures descent angle and landing behavior, a modern strong lofted set can be built into something coherent. The problem was never the technology. The problem was selling the same technology to every golfer as if swing speed, contact quality, and spin needs didn't exist. If you've stayed this long, you already sense something isn't right in how you've been thinking about your irons. Most golfers who feel that don't act on it, they keep adjusting their swing, buying more wedges, second-guessing distances they should know by feel. Every season with the wrong gapping costs shots you never get back. The Smart Bag Blueprint at thisSmartBagBlueprint.com gives you the complete framework, 14 clubs, 7 categories, to audit every club in your bag against your real carry numbers. Link in the description, pinned in the first comment, QR code on screen. You can keep guessing, or you can fix it now. That decision is yours. So why are traditional loft irons coming back? Not because golfers suddenly turned nostalgic, not because the equipment got worse. They're coming back because a growing number of players started asking a different question at the fitting. Not which iron goes farthest, but which iron makes the most sense inside a complete system. Traditional lofts give you something that strong lofts quietly took away, a predictable connection between the number on the club and what it actually does. A 7-iron that behaves like a 7-iron. A pitching wedge with enough loft to generate real descent angle, real spin, real stopping power on firm greens. Long irons that most amateur players can actually get airborne without a perfect strike. The gaps between clubs become natural instead of engineered around a problem that shouldn't exist. This is not about playing less distance. It's about playing more honestly. The golfers gravitating toward traditional lofts, and there are more of them every year, quietly, without much fanfare, aren't choosing to hit shorter. They're choosing to know exactly what they're hitting. They want to stand over a 7-iron from 158 yards and trust it completely, not wonder if their tempo was right, or if the wind offset the extra carry their strong loft produces in ideal conditions. Confidence in a club comes from repetition. Repetition comes from predictability, and predictability comes from a bag where the distances make sense in relation to each other, not just in isolation on a launch monitor. The number on the sole of your iron was never supposed to flatter you. It was supposed to solve a distance. It was supposed to give you a clear, repeatable answer when you're standing in the fairway with a flag 155 yards away, and a decision to make in 10 seconds. When that number stopped meaning something consistent, the decision got harder. Golfers felt it before they understood it, and now, slowly, they're doing something about it. If this video gave you a clearer way to think about your irons, hit the like button, subscribe if you aren't already, and drop a comment below. What iron in your bag do you trust the least right now? Tell me the club and the distance. I want to see the pattern. Share this with the golfer in your life who's been frustrated with their iron game and can't figure out why. Subscribe for what's coming next. We're going deep on how to actually build your iron gapping from scratch. On this channel, we don't buy the marketing. We build the system. The best iron set isn't the one that makes your 7-iron longest. It's the one that makes every club in your bag make sense.